Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us in London for the premiere of this really wonderful film. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction to Hilma. What can audiences expect when they watch it? Who wants to start?
That might be a question for him, I feel like. The big boss.
I can't answer that. I can't answer those questions.
All right, let me go. Hilma is a story about Hilma of Klint, the pioneering contemporary artist who painted in the early 20th century, I guess it would be. She painted beautiful, colorful, abstract paintings in a time before that was popular, and is now being credited with being the first person to do these types of paintings. And it's not as much about her career as it is about her as a human and how she came to be who she is today and who we know her to be. And there's beautiful pictures of her painting and also a lot about her spiritual life and her journey to find her sister and how that led her to come into contact with the spirit world and then inform her paintings.
And it seems incredible that, first of all, how art, I guess, in some ways still hasn't been fully recognized. The history books haven't been rewritten to say that she was one of the first, in the Western world to do abstract artwork. But even that, her story hasn't been put to screen before. So maybe you could start by saying, what inspired you to finally, right that wrong and tell her story?
I started on this project 4 years ago. Up till that point, I hadn't had much interest in spiritual things at all. But through research on another project, I started to get an interest in the realities that might exist, that there might be a world in another dimension to actually be recognized. And that's opened my mind to the idea of making a film about this mystic. She had a belief that I now share after 4 years of spending time with Hilma and her times and her theories and beliefs. And it's been really rewarding for me.
And I guess an amazing opportunity, as mother and daughter, to also play, two different eras of this incredible woman. So what was the appeal for you of telling her story? And how did you work together, perhaps, to kind of have that continuity, but see her at different stages of her life?
I was immediately intrigued just hearing the stories about, or not stories, but hearing about how she was able to see how we were going to receive her in the future, and just these spine-chilling things that she predicted that were going to happen. And now we know that she was right about so many things, and seeing how powerfully her art impacted people today, even though she wasn't received in her own time. So just that part of the story was what drew me in. It was kind of the splashy thing that first gave me goosebumps, and I was like, this is really interesting. But then diving into who she was as a person, I immediately connected with her in a way, and I saw a lot of myself in her and these parts of myself that maybe I hadn't even fully recognized yet and wanted to explore. We met a medium to come into contact with her, both to experience what she did to make her art, and also to talk to her, because it would be really interesting to hear how she was in her private life, since we don't know much about that. And there are a lot of things that she said to us that I feel inside me, which got me very excited to play the part too. She didn't feel like a man or a woman, and there wasn't even a word for that at the time, but I feel myself that I have a lot of masculine energy, and I was excited to bring that to a part that was set in a time where that might not fit in at all, and I thought that was really interesting. How she had almost a manic way of painting. She would go into her paintings and feel this sense of euphoria that gave her temporary relief from all of the pain that she was going through. And feel like that a lot of the time too. And there was just so many aspects of her personal life that I was introduced to after hearing the things that we hear about her through going to the galleries and hearing about her career that just drew me in immediately, and I knew that I would be able to connect with her as an actor.
And for you, and seeing her, in her later life.
I think that, I love what you said, Tora, and about that female-male side of in one person. I think is so interesting. I think a lot of our heroines or heroes in plays and stories have that strange struggle within them, which shouldn't be a struggle, because you can be deeply feminine and have that masculine quality, and it just enriches you. And I grew up as a boy, basically, because I only played with boys, and I feel that has been such an asset in my life, that I'm not limited by, or weren't ever raised to be, you're a girl, so you should. And I think that was a big struggle for Hilma. But I think also what's so inspiring and important today is the group of women that work together, that needed each other in a time where they were in a different way so repressed by the world. And when you really try to imagine their lives, if they were smart and creative and wanted something more, they were so repressed by society. And they had to, like guerrilla warriors, they had to meet and hang out. And sometimes it's interesting, which you see in the film, how they almost have sleepovers where they paint because that's where they were free, because they were so limited. And I think that goes certainly for Hilma and her friends, but a lot of creative or intellectual or scientific women in those days. And that's so interesting and important today, that you need that strength. We all need the Hilma within us today.
And, it looks absolutely stunning on screen. The era is so beautifully evoked from the sets, the costumes, but it's also really infused with, kind of that spiritual part of her imagination. It kind of seems to have gone into the form of the film as well. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your approach and also what it was like being on this set.
Yes, there's probably a lot of ways you can tell a story about this artist, and there's so many interesting aspects to her. And I chose to tell her whole life story in bits and pieces. It's a traditional biopic in that sense. And I added a little bit of the story of her grandfather and how he influenced her life, and also what happened 60, 70 years after her death at Guggenheim Museum, when she was finally recognized and became world famous, finally, 75 years after her death, with art that was painted 120 years ago for us, here and now. So it's an amazing, epic story that way. And it's been fascinating to try to condense it into a 2-hour film. Many ways you can do it. This is one. Feel free to make another one.
But it's interesting that when you say that. It's interesting when you say that you told the story also about her grandfather, because that part of it, I don't want to spoil anything, so spoiler alert. But the whole thing with the depth in the water and the what's it called? Anchor? What's that called in English? Anchor. The sinker. I think. Okay, thank you. I think that is. I see that as a metaphor for her reaching to at the deepest within herself, and of course it ties into the story, because the grandfather was also measuring depth in the sea. But that to me was just used as part of Hilma and her soul-searching, heart-searching journey. That's what I wanted to say. Did you want to say something?
Well, I think there's also part of the question about the sets and being in that time. And I think that I mean, the set design was incredible. Like, you walked in and you were in the world, and the costumes were incredible, and it just like set the mood immediately. And the paintings that were recreated for this, the team that made them, were incredible. And so you got to see everything there, which was, it was so easy to just like put yourself in the situation. But then also just being in those clothes, I mean, it's really easy to become like stuffy and kind of like try to play the time, but we wanted it to be very authentic and feel very modern, because this is a very modern group of women. And I think everyone did a really good job of kind of just like letting it go, and obviously being true to how women would act during the time, but still trying to keep it modern and fresh. And I hope that worked and that it wasn't too offensive, but I think it gives the film a very like authentic, modern feel, even though we are in the costumes and in the time.
And I think I'm out of time, but
Sorry.
thank you very much for sharing all that with me. I can't wait for everyone else to see Hilma, and of course, really enjoy your premiere this evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.